Hello, everyone. How are you all? Welcome to my webinar for July. Let me just sort out a little bit of tech stuff here. It's always an interesting beast, this one. Sorry, telephone call. I need to put stuff on silent. Tech.
How are you all? Sorry.
Right. What am I talking about today? Today, I wanted to share with you about the power of community. Now, why? Because this is something that, in my experience, is one of these cornerstone things that, hello, Mitch, one of these cornerstone things that absolutely impacts the quality of our life, whether or not we truly want to acknowledge it. Let me explain what I mean by that. So I've called this webinar The Power of Community, but a couple of days ago, I put out a post went out under my business page that says it takes a village to raise a child. Now, we've all heard that before, and I don't think that there's any of us that can really argue with that in the whole, if you look at the way that we traditionally lived in particular, that influence of the village on the raising of a child was fundamentally important. And even now, although the way that we have designed our lives in the majority, we've kind of moved away from that village model. There's still multiple people whose influence will help to mold the child into the human being that they become. And I think it's really, really important because none of us have the capacity to be all things to any one person. It's simply not within our capabilities as a human being. Now, if you take that idea and apply it to a business, it takes a community to raise a business, for people to be able to build a business. Because if you think about it, like, in a lot of ways, for those of us who are not focused on raising human babies, a lot of us then are focused on raising our business babies, right? There's like so many correlations if you stop and actually think about it. But if you think about you as a human being, regardless of whether you happen to be in business or whether you are not, it does, like, in a lot of ways, it doesn't really matter. In terms of it's whether or not you're in business, or whether you or not you are working, whether or not you are raising kids, whether or not you are doing something else with your life, it's very important to you as an individual, but you're still a human being, right? We all still need this community around us to be able to get the support that we need when we need support, to help us to grow in the areas that we want to grow in. But it also gives us the capacity to be able to support others, to be able to give of our own genius to the world, to help create the entire dynamic of what we all live in. Now, some of those, whatever your genius happens to be, sometimes that will be really strongly recognized within the society that you happen to be in, and other times it won't be. It doesn't negate the genius that's there. There's just sometimes a little bit of a disconnect on the value of that. But if you think about it, like we've all heard before, hello, Cole and Mary Beth, lovely to have you on here. If you think about, we've all heard at different times, you become you become the average of the 5 people that you hang around. As parents, or as people who are helping to raise the next generation, we know this innately, even if it's this whole theory about, being the average of the top 5 is not something that you've actually sort of heard of or studied before. None of us want our kids hanging around with the naughty kids. None of us want our kids hanging around or hanging out with the people who are, if you've got teenagers and young adults, you don't want them falling into the wrong crowd, right? You don't want them to be the wrong crowd. There's a knowing there within us, regardless of anything that you look at in terms of like research and stuff. there's a knowing within us that who we associate with influences who we become as individuals. And so so the community that we choose to surround ourselves will influence what our future looks like. So I have a question for you, for any of you who are on here, and I would love it if you would answer this in the chat if you would like to. But what's more important to me is that you answer this for you as a human being. What does your personal community look like right now? Does it give you what you want and what you need as a human being? Now, you may have different communities in your professional and personal lives. You may have a beautiful blend of both. It doesn't really matter, so long as it doesn't matter what that community looks like. What's really important is, does that community help you in the way that you need it to help you? And can you, by default, by the flip side of that, can you help that community? Do you have the capacity to, in whatever that looks like, and in terms of being able to shine your genius? Mary Beth's put a comment in here saying, we had the best example of community during our huge storm. So Mary Beth's is in the US. One day I will remember exactly where. People and rival competitive businesses helping each other out so food doesn't spoil during our power outage, and people taking water and food to the utility worker, free food at restaurants. That's amazing. I hate that you guys have gone through such a big, exhausting, trauma like that in terms of the storm, but so wonderful to see those things coming together like that. And I'm looking down here as I'm doing this because I've got my phone sitting on a little stand down there. So I'm not trying to, it's the juggle of the tech that happens. And look, to see, I mean, we will have all been through some kind of disaster where we have watched our community dynamic completely change. We had an instance not very long ago where one of our neighbours, their house caught fire, did a massive amount of damage. It's going to be, with the building industry, etc., the way it is, it's going to be a long time before they are back into their regular home. Now, I'm a little bit ashamed to say that I had actually met this family before the fire. Life happened, I knew my neighbours on the other side. Like where I'm sitting right now, I have neighbours that are that direction and that direction. The neighbours on this side, I knew. The neighbours on that side, and they, like the people whose house burned, don't live directly next to me, but the people down that way I don't know so well. And but we met them and we've been doing what we can to help them out as needed. There was some sort of acute stuff in the beginning, but the event of their house catching fire and all the other flow on from that shifted the dynamic of what happened here. We got to meet these people, and I am so grateful that we have been able to meet them. And we have now, their son and one of their sons and our son are at the same school together, so we bump into each other every so often, and it's really lovely to have that connection, even though it's stemmed from such a horrible event that happened to that family. So I guess it's a really, the thing is that if you think about your personal community, the dynamic of the group of people who you have around you right now, have you got those people who have the capacity to support you in a crisis? Have you got the people that will encourage you to strive and to grow and to become the very best version of you that you can be? Have you got those people around you who you can have a little vent to when stuff gets a bit rough, right? Do you have those? Maybe they are the same people that do all those different roles for you, which is beautiful. But, when we look at what we need as human beings, there are always we're multifaceted humans. We need multifaceted support. Have you got that around you? And if the answer to that is yes, I absolutely applaud you, because most people don't have a strong community these days. If you have a look at the way that we live, so often these days, most of us are fairly isolated. Like I said, like I live on a block of land in town. And I didn't know my neighbours who were just down the road because I hadn't chosen to reach out and get to know them. I'd met the people who were right through my fence here. We'd had conversations with a few others. You know, there's a few different things that we've done in the area since we lived here to try and sort of get to know, but we hadn't really engaged a lot. I've lived in this house now for, it'll be 6 years next month. And this year's the first year that I put my hand up to help with a local community event. Like, what am I doing? I've done other community events, but, you know, up in Toowoomba, which is a little bit bigger. It's where I do most of my business stuff, but I hadn't actually done something here in my hometown. And so I'm making that choice to shift these things within my world. And it's only making my world better. It's you know, about probably 10 or so years ago, I had created a community around me that when I hit a couple of really tough hurdles for myself personally, I didn't feel like I had the people around me who could support me. I hadn't worked on building all the elements of my community that I needed. And I paid the price for that. Right? It became a very lonely, very sad, very difficult time in my life, which I've since navigated through and then consciously made the choice to cultivate other relationships so that I've got that community that I need. So I guess it's important to kind of take a little bit of a mental restock, not a restock. That's not the right word. Just take the time to do a little bit of an assessment, I guess, of the people that you have around you, of the situations that may or may not come into your world in the future. Do you have the people that you think that you can expect to need? Mary Beth's written in here, I'm a nurturer and I'm a fix-it person. I want others to achieve their goals. If we help each other, reach what we want and our goals, then everyone succeeds, everyone flourishes, the best of people come out in the worst of times. Absolutely. I absolutely agree with you, and I've experienced that myself so many times. Mary Beth's also written, I have a saying, every person is a bridge to friendship, customer, potential co-worker, buyer, seller, or even someone who knows a person who is the answer to your problem. Absolutely. Never miss an opportunity of a moment with a person or complete stranger who you may be their saving grace or vice versa. Man, I have experienced that so many times, We just have a conversation with somebody. I remember many, many years ago, well before I even met my husband, I was in the US. And I happened to be in New York City, and I'd gone to TKTS to buy tickets to a Broadway show. Now, I don't know whether TKTS even exists anymore. They used to have one in a building that no longer exists in New York. But TKTS sold tickets for shows. It opened at midday each day, and they sold tickets to shows that were available that night. So it was like the what if of theatre shows, right? And so I had gotten to New York because prior to that, like during my time in New York, I was actually staying with a family in Philadelphia. And the dad had a conference up in Philadelphia, so I went up there and at the same time and to New York City. And he ended up having meetings and stuff. So I had actually gone to TKTS, bought 2 tickets, and in my traveler's budget, that was a pretty significant investment. And then found out later in the day that he couldn't go. So I needed to offload one of the tickets. Well, when I was in line to buy the tickets initially, I'd ended up having a conversation with this man who happened to be homeless. He had moved to New York, was living out of his car, couldn't find a job, etc., parked his car in the wrong place, and it got repossessed, and he and his son ended up living on the streets. And so he was just wandering and happened to be in Times Square when I bought this ticket, and when I was in line the first time, and I had a bit of a chat with him. And then I went back, and I was, I was 21 years old at the time and very unworldly, I was so naive. So I went back to where all these people were, and I saw him, and he was still there. And I had this conversation with him and asked him if he would help me to sell this ticket, or sell these 2 tickets, because they were sitting side by side. And that was a little bit hard to get with, last minute tickets, obviously, so that I could get back in line and just buy another single ticket. And he did. And it made, oh my goodness, this man was just, it made my life so easy at the time, because I was so filled with anxiety, wanting to like look for some help with trying to sell these tickets, right? It was only 2 tickets. And I look back at it now and it's kind of nothing. But at the time it was this like massive dilemma for me. And this man, like literally, it was just this chance conversation with a person who happened to be beside me in line, because he was literally going up and down the line asking if people would give him some money, because he was homeless and didn't have any source of income at the time. And yeah, I had a conversation with him, and I think I gave him, I don't remember whether I gave him any money initially. I certainly gave him some after he helped me with selling the tickets. And it was just this random conversation where that man for that moment became a part of my community that made my life so much easier when I suddenly had a challenge ahead of me. I didn't know that was going to happen. I didn't have that conversation with him to begin with, because I was just, wanting to have a conversation with a homeless person. I just had a conversation with someone who happened to be there, who happened to be homeless. And then he ended up helping me. And it made all the difference to me. And as a thank you, I gave him some money so that he could then go and he literally said, with what he had been able to make for himself, and then that little bit extra that I gave him, he was going to go and find his son and go and buy a meal for them. And I hope he did. I don't know whether he did or not, but he certainly didn't seem to be someone who was struggling with addiction and stuff when I spoke with him. However, like I said, I have no idea. Who knows what he did, but I do know that he helped me and I gave him a little something in return. So the thing, I share that because it's like, as Mary Beth said, so you just don't know what's going to come out of these conversations, and where you, as you've mentioned again, stepped outside of your comfort zone, reached out to somebody, extended the boundaries of your personal community, and then been able to help each other. He helped me to sell the tickets. I helped him by giving me a little bit of money. Easy, simple transaction. Both came away happy, and both had our days enriched because of the conversations. So have a think about, like I was saying, going back to what does your community look like right now? Have you got places where, if you've, in my business right now, I'm in a phase of reviewing essentially my messaging and marketing. And it's taken me some time to find the right people to work with who approach marketing in the way that I want to approach it, because there's so many different ways that we can do this, right? But I got into a retreat a couple of weeks ago on the invitation of a couple of people who are in business whose opinions I really value. And they were, really recommending this other lady who does marketing. And I got into it, and absolutely I got value from the work. But I've since decided to not continue to work with her, because there's not enough alignment in what we have, in the way that we communicate. Now, since doing that, I've continued to look for somebody else to help with my marketing, and I'm finishing off another sort of branding kind of thing. And I've been able to find someone else who I'm more strongly aligned with, whose work is more in keeping with the way that I want to communicate already. So I feel like they can, help me get to where I need to be. But the reality is that if I hadn't had those initial conversations with these women who were in business, who recommended that retreat that I did, I wouldn't have been able to refine what I was looking for and eventually find the people who I have chosen to work with. So there's all these little stepping stones that when we look backwards, these connections within our community help us to get to where we are and help us to create the signposts that we need to move forwards. But if you don't have that strong community in the first place, then what? Right? You're kind of stuck. So I want to share with you another example too that I actually lived when I was younger. So when I was a kid in primary school, One of the schools that I went to was a little one teacher primary school, like literally grade 1 to grade 7. We had a single school teacher because the school in its entirety had between, when I was there, 11 and 20 odd kids in the whole school, right? I was the only person in my year group. And so, you know, it's a little tiny school in a little country community where we are pretty spread out. So that school actually no longer exists. But back in the 80s and 90s, it was still open and humming. And when I went away to boarding school, the school community, excuse me, started a camp draft. Now, for the Mary Beth, you may not know what a camp draft is, given that you are in America, but it's a Australian horse sport, essentially. That has been designed around the sort of stock work that you'll do on a horse when you're moving and sorting cattle in the stockyards on a property. And it's a big deal. If you talk to camp drafters, camp drafting is everything. It's a really big thing. Sorry, excuse me, people. But to run a camp draft is a really big logistical job. You've got people and horses and cattle and, you know, bunches of food. Events usually take a bare minimum of an entire day. Sometimes most camp drafts will take a couple of days. There's some big ones that run up, you know, like, you know, sort of big national sort of sized camp drafts here in Australia that run over 4 and 5 days. This camp draft was called the Cooey Downs Camp Draft. It was on a property called Cooey Downs, and it was run by the Peekadoo State School. Now, the Peekadoo State School, when I was there in grade 7, had 11 people in it from grade 1 to grade 7, 11 students. And I think we had about 6 or 7 families. I'd have to go back and have a look at that, because one family had 4 kids at school. So that's a lot out of 11. And the school got smaller after I left. But that parent group, that P&C group, started the Cooey Downs Camp Draft after I left primary school. And I went back and competed in that when I was in high school. Now, that camp draft ended up being absolutely massive. It grew to being a 2-day event, and it was a solid 2 days. People would come in on a Friday night and set up camp. They would start competition at first light on a Saturday morning, run through until dark because they didn't have lighting on at the event, like for out in the ring where all the competition happened. So they could only operate in daylight, but they went from daylight till dark Saturday and Sunday, and daylight till dark. So for the 2 full days. It was huge. Now, that whole event was coordinated by the P&C families. So there's probably 4 or 5 families in that. And then it was massively supported by the local community and in terms of the people who lived in the area, but also the camp drafting community. And every single year, this event was run as a fundraiser for the school. Now, they every year without fail made a solid 5-figure profit out of that event. Now, 5 figures across a weekend. Now, this takes all year to set up. Obviously, it's a massive event to run, and there was lots and lots of people involved in it. But this little school that had, 10 or less students in it had 5 figures worth like solid 5 figures, not just a 1 in front, coming into that school every single year from that event, because of the power of community. Now, our kids have been to schools here. When they were in primary school, the biggest school our kids went to was 160 odd kids. And we ran I helped to run a fundraiser that was a golf day. And I think we made $3,500 out of that. And the school was ecstatic because now, this is a school with probably 100 families, and we did a good 4-figure balance, like profit out of that event, and it wasn't the size of what this camp draft was. But there was this whole difference in the way that the communities worked together to be able to bring those events to fruition and ultimately get those results, in terms of both of them were being run as fundraisers to help raise funds for the schools so that they could benefit the children. When you've got a strong community, you can literally move mountains. Anything can be created when you've got the right community around you. It's building that community and creating effective systems and having good communication through it that makes all the difference in terms of how functional and effective that community is in doing whatever it is that community needs to be able to do. It's just, again, Mary Beth, absolutely. It's never too late to rebuild your circle. 100%. 100%. When I was, it's never too late to rebuild a community, whether that happens to be your neighborhood, whether that's your personal community, whether it's your professional community. You starting the minute that you realize that there's a problem is the very best time to start. We all need support from other people. We all need the support of businesses. I was on a phone call this morning to a lady who I'm getting to help me with. I'm outsourcing some stuff that I hate, basically. And I spoke to this lady this morning and asked for some help. And she said, oh, like, normally we don't do this, but because you're a friend of mine, I'll have a chat with my business partner and we'll see what we can do. That's the power of community. I didn't ask for the favor. I said to her, this is what I need. I didn't realize that her business had taken a change in direction and had moved away from the original stuff. I simply communicated with her because I needed her help. I know this woman. I trust who she is. She's a beautiful human being and she's got an amazing business. And I wanted her help to do something that I hate doing. I hate there's a whole lot of, I'll share about that some other time, but it's because it's some personal related stuff, right? But I literally rang her just to get her help in what I thought she was already doing. And even though she's not doing that, she's still going to help me because we've got that relationship, because she's a part of my community and I'm a part of hers. And so we are just, I'll help her because I'm going to pay her. She'll help me because I don't need to do this stuff that I hate. It's a win-win. Absolutely. The more you know, the more people that you know, the more connections that you have, the more you understand where people are going and what they're looking for and how you can help them and how they can help you. And the stronger your community becomes. And it's like, so this, when you see, I wanted to share about this because I've been watching around our local area. There's all these different communities who are working together to try and achieve different results. And they are all absolutely valid results that people are working on. Right now, I'm working on bringing together my Christmas in July event. Now it's a few weeks away. But that to me is a really important space where people can build their community. I want to bring people into the room who don't know each other, whose lives wouldn't necessarily ordinarily cross paths, right? The goal of the event is to be able to raise funds for Dolly's Dream. Now, Dolly's Dream is a charity that's run here in Australia that is about helping to change the culture that exists around bullying. It was started by Kate and Tick Everett after their daughter, whose nickname was Dolly, suicided because of the effects of bullying. Now, my connection to that charity stems back to the community that I was a part of with the Peekadoo State School. Kate Everett and I went to primary school together. Her daughter Dolly and our daughter were a similar age. Our daughter, thankfully, didn't choose the path of suicide, but she was absolutely bullied at school and had some really big problems with that. There's a lot of stuff that's like a little bit of a parallel there. And the work that Kate and Tick are doing with Dolly's Dream around the bullying space is really important work. And so being able to bring together an event like Christmas in July and bring together community and to create a space where people can get to know each other, where they can step outside their comfort zone and extend the arm of conversation, I guess, whatever the proper terminology is, but have a conversation with someone that they wouldn't normally meet, and find the person who can help you with the next step. Maybe they'll just make a little comment that helps you to work through a challenge that you've got going on. Maybe they'll just make you laugh. It doesn't have to be that everybody who's around you is there to solve a problem. Maybe they're just fun to be with. Maybe you get to giggle together. But in bringing people together in this event, I want to help people to build their own communities, to create a space where you can come together with people, and then with a shared purpose of helping to raise funds for Dolly's Dream. Now, there are lots and lots of ways that, I see fundraising events happening here around our local area that are phenomenal. Holy smokes. There are such big goals and big dreams associated with these things. The challenge that I have with that for myself is that often that comes with a big ticket price of actually entry into those events. I've chosen deliberately with with Christmas in July to keep the price point for that at a lower point. We're not going to go into the super fancy, magical Wonderland Christmas stuff. We're going to do some Christmassy things. It'll be nice, but it's not like I'm going to get a snowmaker or something like that going on, right? I don't have the budget for that. If we've got that sort of budget, I want that to go to Dolly's Dream, because that's where I see I can help that community more, right? We're doing all these different things to bring people together with that common aim of helping to raise funds for Dolly's Dream, as we also build our community, because it just makes all the difference when you have those people that you can call on. I can see in here, there's been some other comments made. I'm sorry, I can't get to them all, but I can see that Shailene's in here, and Mitch has made a comment as well. Mitch has become a really important part of my community. Now, Mitch, for those of you who know, she's a VA and she works with me, and she's based in the Philippines. But literally, we had a conversation earlier this morning where, she and I both support each other in our business, in the business that happens to be 10,000 Dreams that she works for and I happen to own. Right? Mitch she's been working with me for 3 years next week. We've built this really solid bond, and she's become a part of the community. I've also now been able to bring in 2 other VAs who support Mitch, and we also have this other community happening. I was able to go away and have 10 days holidays, and the ladies kept everything humming because we've got that team environment going. Now, I don't know the other VAs as well as I know Mitch. They haven't worked with me for as long. I haven't been able to have that volume of conversations with them yet. But they are still a part of that community that helps me. And they help me and I help them. It's a win-win situation. Shailene, who's in here, has helped me on many occasions. And often, she won't even be aware of it, because sometimes it's a post that she's put out on Facebook that has helped me to, adjust the stinking thinking that needs a bit of a tweak every so often. But even just to see Shailene at an event somewhere and to get one of her wonderful hugs and to have a beautiful conversation with her, it's the sort of thing that just fills my soul, makes my heart smile, right? Those are the things, and sometimes we get to have lovely deep chats and sometimes we don't. But the fact that she's there, and I know that where to find her, and I know that I can call on that help when I need it, because it's always a question of when, not just an if, right? The fact that she's a part of my community is a really important thing to me. So as I go through all of this stuff, and yes, I can bang on about this stuff for hours, obviously, but I really want you to take a moment and have a think about what your own community looks like right now. This is the community that you as an individual have built. it does, like, it can be connected to your neighborhood. It can be connected to your family relationships. It can be connected to your personal relationships. It can be around your business relationships or professional relationships. What does your community look like? Have you got a community around you that lift you, that help you, that can support you, that encourage you to be more? Do you have that right now? I want you to really have a think about that. And if the answer to that is kinda, or a flat out no, then let's change that. The process of changing it means you've got to step outside your comfort zone a little bit. You've got to initiate some conversations with people. And who knows where those conversations will end up. But if your community is not what you need right now, if it's not giving you all of the support that is required for you to be able to get the help that you know that you need when you need it, if there's not people there that you can call on to just go and hang out with when you want to chill out, if there's not people there who, you know that you can have a laugh with, it's time to expand what you're doing. It's time to make some changes. And if Christmas in July is the place to make those changes, then please come and join us. We would love to have you there. Mitch has just popped a link into the chat so that you can do that if you'd like to. If you want people to become aware of you and can't make it to that event, we can have a chat about that with ways that you can promote yourself. And if you want to donate to Dolly Stream and can't make it to the event as well, we've also got a donation link where you can go directly through to the Dolly Stream website through a little link that's connected to our event, so that you can donate there if you'd like to, because all of these things are important, every single one of them. Now, I will make sure that the Dolly Stream link gets popped up as well by either myself or Mitch or one of the other ladies. But please consider your community. Have a think about the gaps that are there right now, because quite frankly, we probably all have gaps in our community. And if you need some help with that, give me a yell. Click on my name on the live and send me a PM, and I'll do what I can to help you. But for now, I'm going to say, I hope you'll join us at Christmas in July. But for now, it's bye from me.